Hey everyone, welcome back. And I'm super excited to talk about some more advanced stuff. This is not for beginners. And I'm excited to welcome my next guest speaker, and that is Ty Crandall, CEO of a company called Credit Suite. And Ty is going to talk about the step by step formula to building business credit.
Natalie, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Super excited to have you, Ty.
I am super excited to be here. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if that's okay. I think
Yeah.
I've already kind of tested this out, so we should be good to go. So let me get into this really quick and let's get started. Share presentation. Here we go. All right. Give me just a minute here. All right. So today, what I want to do is I really want to talk about building corporate credit. We'll talk about building business credit. And this is really applicable to your business, it's applicable to your clients as well. And this is really the key to being able to kind of access unlimited funding to grow a business and then also be able to do so without providing personal guarantees, without providing personal credit checks. It's just an easier way to qualify to be able to get financing if you can't get other kind of financing, and then to get significantly more money and better terms when you can. So to give you kind of some insight, I want to start off by talking a little bit about this guy right here, Sam. And actually, give me just one second here to modify my slides a little. But Sam, man, I'm sorry, Natalie. I'm kind of falling apart here today. So Sam is a guy that not back in 1940 it actually started a business, and he actually got into retail. And I've got the wrong thing on the bottom of the slide, so if you don't mind, give me just a second. So he had actually started a business back in 1940. He actually got into retail, and he started working for J.C. Penney. He went to serve in World War II, and then after World War II, what he ended up doing was basically came out and got a franchise, a Benjamin Franklin franchise. Now, Ben Franklin at the time was a franchise that kind of had was like a retail franchise where they sold a lot of different things. And his father-in-law basically put the money forward for him to be able to buy the franchise. He made it very successful. He really enjoyed retail. And what he did from there was he continued to create more stores. So he basically would go from where he started this really small store in the middle of nowhere in Arkansas, and he would drive to Tennessee. And in Tennessee, he would actually go and buy a bunch of products that he loved. And then he would bring them to his store and he would basically sell them as part of his store. And he would continue to do this. It was hugely successful in this small town. So he actually opened up another franchise with Benjamin Franklin a little bit later in another town that's neighboring town. And then he continued to do another and another. So he had about a handful of these, and he became the top franchisee for Ben Franklin. And then what happened was his wife said, "Hey, look, I think we've accomplished enough. Maybe it's time to maybe stop building more and more." Well, ultimately, what happened was he was a rebel. He's an entrepreneur like a lot of us. And what happened was Ben Franklin didn't really like the way that he was doing business because he was breaking their model with going out and buying a lot of products on the East Coast, bringing them in, and then selling them into stores. So ultimately, he broke free and he started to create his own store. And his own store was just as successful as he had made it in the franchise as well. He continued to get another store and another store and another store. And then as he got to the total of about 5 stores, that's when him and his wife had a discussion about maybe stopping at that point and not continuing to build anymore. Well, luckily for all of us, that didn't happen. And Sam continued to then move on, and he created a company called Walmart. And Walmart actually now today has 10,500 stores around the world. And what's interesting is if you listen or even read Sam's book, he'll oftentimes talk about how he would go in the beginning and people would go back into the back room when he was dealing with suppliers. They would pull his Dun and Bradstreet credit profile to make the decision on whether or not he should be given credit lines to be able to buy the things he needed to buy. He was confident that he had his credit profile strong with Dun and Bradstreet, so he was able to continue to get those credit lines and continue to build a massive, massive, massive empire. What's interesting about Walmart is what Walmart makes Walmart successful is that 80% of everything they sell, they're basically buying using business credit. So what happens here is that Walmart ultimately, if you go through a Walmart store and you look at the shelves, you see 8 of 10 items on the shelves. Well, 8 of those 10 items are purchased using business credit. So what Walmart will basically do is Walmart will come in, they will use business credit to buy Bounty paper towels, for example. They put the Bounty paper towels on the shelf. You come in to Walmart, you buy those Bounty paper towels. towels. They then take the money that you gave them and they pay off bounty. They pay off the credit that they used to buy those paper towels to begin with. So literally almost everything in Walmart, they are buying on credit. Then you are buying it. They're taking your money to pay that off. And they've done this so masterfully that they've become the number one retailer in the world. And they've done it through something that we're all familiar with called OPM, or other people's money. And not only Walmart is doing this, but if we look at every single one of the largest publicly owned or privately owned companies in the country, then we see them doing exactly the same thing. So if we look at Facebook, for example, they've got 40 trade lines here with Experian, or 40 accounts showing on their Experian commercial credit reports. We look at Dell, we see 83 or 131 with Microsoft, or Apple for 138. So Apple's interesting as well. If we look at any given time, the numbers fluctuate, but they may be sitting on about $120 billion in cash, but then they have about $100 billion in debt. Now, Dave Ramsey, steward of the world, would say, Walmart, or Apple, I know how to solve this problem. You simply take your cash and pay off your debt. But there's a reason that Apple sits on $100 billion in debt, and the reason is that they, like Walmart, like Facebook, Dell, Microsoft, all of these largest privately owned, publicly owned companies are using other people's money to grow and scale. They're using business credit especially to be able to pay for the things business credit will pay for. And then they're taking their cash and they're using their cash for expansion. So in Walmart's case, they're using their cash to build new stores. That's why they have 10,500 around the world. Apple uses their cash for research and development. They also use it to expand their retail empire as well. It's why they are the most valuable company on the planet. And it's not just them. We see this with Pilot Flying J, which is one of the largest privately owned companies in the country. So is Publix, which is right here in my backyard in Lakeland, Florida as well. And we can continue to see that they just have hundreds and hundreds of trade lines on their business credit reports because they are borrowing a lot of money. They are rapidly using business credit to be able to grow and scale. And then here's interesting with Walmart as well, 513 accounts on their business credit reports, 513 trade lines. So think about that. If you think about your own consumer credit report, maybe you've got 5, 6, 7, 8. If you think about the credit cards and your mortgage, or maybe multiple properties and auto loans, 513 open accounts. And this shows the masterful use of using business credit to be able to grow and scale. But what else is interesting is this. If we look at Mars Incorporated, that creates Mars bars, we see they've got 22 accounts. We also see here that these are just two fairly new company business credit, about 6 months into the process. They were already having about 50 or 70% as many accounts on their business credit reports as Mars Incorporated does. So what's interesting is that small businesses can follow the exact same system that large businesses use to be able to build business credit and to be able to tap into other people's money to be able to grow. And this is a real problem that we're trying to solve, because access to capital is a very concerning thing to entrepreneurs. It's also the number one and two reasons that businesses fail. Half of businesses won't make it 5 years. We see that 82% of these failures are directly linked to cash flow issues. And we see that a staggering 90% of business owners agree that the availability of loans is a problem. And majority of business owners, this is what keeps them up at night, is getting the money they need to maintain where they are, to be able to grow, to be able to stay competitive, to be able to own or be able to create more market share. So again, money is important to a small business, and business credit is the formula that the largest publicly owned and privately owned companies use. It's also something any small business can obtain if you know the exact recipe to do so. But every business can build business credit exactly the same way that the large players do, and then use this to be able to reliably grow and scale their company. So what is business credit? How does it work? How can you get it? How can you actually monetize on it? Well, business credit's ultimately credit for a business. If we think about our consumer credit reports, TransUnion, Equifax, Experian, then these are consumer credit. This is consumer credit report where we basically get new credit, we use the credit, we pay our bills, it shows on our reports, and the more that we establish credit, the more that we're able to use our credit to buy. It's fundamentally exactly the same thing in a business. But the difference is that unlike a credit profile personally being linked to our social, in the business world, we're building a corporate credit profile that's linked to the business's EIN. The business now has its own credit, and ultimately, the business has the ability unique ability for the business to be able to fund itself. It's not reliant on personal guarantees of the business owner. It's not reliant on a lot of the financials, the credit worthiness of the actual business owner. The business starts to establish itself to a point where it can start standing on its own, funding itself, and getting away from a lot of what's been needed in the initial growth stages of a business to be able to get the business there. So why is business credit awesome? A lot of things happening here. First of all, you can get approved regardless of consumer credit quality for business credit. So this means that anybody can get business credit no matter how good or bad their personal credit may be. If you're building business credit properly, there's not even any kind of credit check taking place. So even if somebody's business credit is horrible, they're still able to come in, or personal credit's horrible, they're still able to come in and obtain business credit. There's also no personal guarantee. There's no personal liability. So this means that if a business were ever to default or ever to go late, then it's not adversely affecting the business owner's consumer credit reports. The business debtors can't come after the actual business owner. And this was a huge problem for me. It's why I got into space. Because when I owned a mortgage company in 2008, things were great. And then the mortgage crisis occurred out of left field. Didn't expect it. Something that was out of my control completely ruined my section of the industry, which is jumbo loans. And as a result of that, since I, like a lot of us here and all of entrepreneurs, personally guaranteed my business debts, those debtors took everything. They cleaned out my personal bank accounts. They reported the debts on my personal credit reports. That lowered all my limits to what I owed, ruined my personal credit, and removed my ability to recover financially because I was tied to the business. But with business credit, you're able to separate this liability, to not attach a personal guarantee. And so again, the business is responsible for the debts, but it's not linked to the business owner. There's also no inquiries on the business on the consumer credit reports. Inquiries are like gold in my world. They really are. I mean, I can talk to you about certain kinds of funding where you can get 25, 30, $50,000 more in funding if you have one or two less inquiries than what you may have. It's a really big deal. So as business owners or people that are helping business owners, we've got to make sure that they limit inquiries on their personal credit reports, because it gives them a greater ability to borrow on the personal side. And it also gives them the ability to use those inquiries in strategically when it comes to acquiring business capital. There are some business loans and some credit lines they're going to want and need, and they can provide the actual credit check in those scenarios and in the actual inquiry, but not in other scenarios when they don't need to, where their business and the business credit profile can carry them without needing consumer credit, without needing those credit inquiries. One of the things that I think is staggering is per SBA, these limits on the business credit accounts are 10 to 100 times higher than consumer credit. And this is interesting because if we think about consumer credit, we may never need to spend $10,000 on home computers for our homes, but we easily need 10,000 or more for computers for an office. And this is why limits are so much higher on corporate credit cards, because with business credit, we're actually funding a business, and a business, as we all know, has an endless appetite for money. It needs access to a lot more money than an individual does to be able to operate. So that's why these limits are so high. And on the reverse side, it's also why so many business owners get in trouble. So many business owners get in trouble because they start to use consumer credit. And as coaches, what we understand is we understand that everything takes twice as long, if not longer, than what we think. Everything costs twice as much, if not more, than what we think it will cost. So a lot of business owners get started, especially in the early stages, and they're funding their business on consumer credit cards, and they're damaging their personal credit, and they quickly bury themselves in those credit cards with they're maxing them out, and then they ruin their ability to go out and get other kind of financing, because consumer credit was never designed to fund a business. This is what corporate credit, business credit was originally designed for. By the way, it's been around a long time. It's been around way before the consumer credit bureaus ever existed. We see Dun& Bradstreet, where 5 US presidents have worked for them. So this isn't a new concept. Corporate credit was around before consumer credit ever was, and it gives us the ability, like I said, for the business to fund itself, because these limits are so much higher on the corporate credit side than what we find on the consumer side. It also helps you quickly be able to get credit. In the consumer world, if you started today building a credit profile, and I know we've all have our credit profiles well established, but it would take us 6 months for FICO to even give us a score from when stuff started to report to them. In the business world, your scores are just based on how you pay your bills. So if we get credit that reports, we pay our bills on time, we get good scores. And the good thing about that is that we can do that very quickly. We could typically do that within weeks or less than 30 days. So it's very fast to build. It's a very fast solution for somebody to get capital, especially if they can't get other kinds of capital. And even if they can, it helps them get better rates and terms. And SBA, Score, Inc., Entrepreneur all say that one of the most valuable aspects of business credit is that we're separating consumer and commercial credit. We're building credit for the business that can be used for the business to fund itself. We're building credit as a consumer that we're using to fund things in our personal life. And this gives us more than double the borrowing ability because our business now has its own credit profile. It has its own credit. It has higher credit limits. And then we have our consumer credit, which again isn't being used now to fund the business. So it gives us more than double the ability to access capital as a result of that. And it just establishes our credibility. One of our clients, amongst many that secured over $1 million in business credit, was talking about this the other day to our tribe. And she said, look, what's interesting is that it's easier for me to get business now. And these are things a lot of people don't think about because your business credit reports are public record. Anybody can see them. They don't need your permission. Anybody here, I can go pull your corporate credit profile right now. You can pull anybody's corporate credit profile for a client, a competitor, anybody that you want to. So as a result of that, a lot of times people like me that know the ins and outs, before I'm making big, large purchase decisions, I'm pulling the corporate credit profile from that business. It's accessible to me. It helps me make better decisions. And as a result of that, you look more reputable to lenders, to suppliers, to credit issuers, even to your customers, because your business credit profile ultimately is your reputation. So it's a lot of benefits that business credit really provides us. So what can and can't we do with it? Well, ultimately, business credit and business credit alone can qualify you for almost any kind of revolving credit. If we talk about a store credit card, you can't name a store that probably doesn't offer business credit. Everywhere from Apple to Dell to HP to Sam's Club and Costco to Staples and Office Depot, even Nordstrom's and Macy's offer corporate credit without personal guarantees and credit checks. None of that requires it be linked to the business owner. We even see auto financing available on this. This is all very short term, less than 6 months. One of our clients got approved for $185,000 in Ford. No personal guarantee, no personal credit check. And then beyond that, as the business continues to grow and scale, then the business gets access to more and more capital without the guarantee. Now, getting loans in the beginning and SBA loans and credit lines without guarantees, that's not going to happen until the credit profile is established. But the same as Michael Dell doesn't guarantee Dell's debts, eventually the business can grow out of those personal guarantees as more and more and more accounts appear on those business credit reports. If we look at Walmart, for example, they've got $50 million credit lines on their corporate credit profiles. This is why that credit is so deep. There's so much depth that we don't need any guarantees, and any business can actually do exactly the same thing. So what does this look like? Well, here's some recent approvals to kind of give you an idea, from Wex fleet cards here to transportation to gas cards, as we see here from Racetrack and Shell, Wawa for $6,000, for $8,000, more capital on tap here. We from J.C. Penney's to Sam's Club cards for thousands of dollars. Amazon credit cards are very easy to get, from $5,000 to $30,000 limits as well. So we just see tons and tons of approval, from Jiffy Lube to everything in between. Business credit gives us the ability to be able to get MasterCards, to be able to get Visa cards, to be able to get auto financing, to be able to get most type of vendor credit, retail credit, all of which without a personal guarantee and credit check. Amazon, this is what we call universal cash credit here from Navy Federal Credit Union, for example. So really no end. There's an unlimited amount of capital that can be accessed by building business credit. Really how much you get just depends on how much you want to apply for. And this is one, you kind of get an idea of how fast and how rapid this process is, where she starts with these, what we call small limits, 2 to 5 grand. And then we get all the way up to 10, 15, $20,000 limits within a matter of months. And within 6 to 12 months, she's seeing 40, 50, 75, hundreds of thousands of dollars of limits. All of this didn't require a guarantee or a credit check for approval. You can start to see her business credit reports. You can see actual approval. You can see her holding or fanning a lot of her cards, and even saying, hey, look, if you follow Ty Crandall's program, you'll get what you need. I didn't even fit the program. What we did is just simplify this for small business owners to be able to get the same kind of results that we're seeing with the biggest companies that are actually in the country today. So that being said, how does this work? How do we get it? Well, ultimately, it starts with what we call fundability. And fundability is really interesting because most businesses that get denied get denied because of this. A lot of business owners go to get capital and they get denied, and they think it's because of their credit score. They think it's because of their income. They think it's because of their time in business. But statistically, the majority of applications that are denied are not denied for any of these reasons. They're denied because the lenders basically don't see the business as credible. They don't see it as what we call fundable or lendable. So fundability is really the ability for a business owner to get money from the system, to get credit cards, to get credit lines, to get loans. And most of what fails for a business owner to be able to do this is in the fundability section. It really has to do with especially fundability foundation. It's a business owner not knowing what their industry code is. Like, do you know what your NAICS code is? This is an industry code that identifies your industry. And not just that you're in consulting, for example, what's the exact NAICS for coaching or for consulting or whatever industry you or your clients are in? Most people don't know that, but that determines a lot of things in this world, especially your risk for lenders, for credit issues, for the credit bureaus. The business credit bureaus have comparison scores that compare you against others in your industry, and it's all based on your NAICS code. But if you don't know that, then more than likely the bureaus, the lenders, the credit issuers aren't going to have it correct either. So again, it's very important to make sure that we've got fundability because it's the very first step, and it's what accounts for the majority of what gets denied. So we want to have a corporation is the best type of entity to set up. We want to have a separate address and a phone number for the business, and it's not the home address. It's not mobile phones or any other kind of phone. It's a separate phone number for the business. We're going to have professional email addresses, a business license, business bank accounts. We need to know our NAICS code and know that we're not in a high risk industry. Look, there's 120 fundability factors, way too many to discuss right now, but that gives you an idea of how important it is. So what's interesting is that the number one reason, and I always ask this question and rarely ever, and I don't know if I I don't think I can get comments here, but rarely ever does anybody ever actually be able to answer this question successfully. But just in your head, what is the number one reason that you think that loans and credit applications get denied? Like, what do you think? Why do we see denials? What is the most common reason? That's way more than 50-60% of the time we see denials. It's actually fraud. So what happens is lenders think that the applicant is fraudulent because they don't meet basic fundability requirements. And this is what happens. A business owner applies for credit financing. The computer takes that application data and first checks it against Secretary of State. If there's any mismatched data between these two things, then what happens is the computer spits out a fraud alert because the applicant's data can't be validated at the Secretary of State level. And again, this is very common if we think about it. We oftentimes set up our Secretary of State, we change addresses, we change phone numbers, we change info. We never think about going back and updating it. And then they actually go across the web. They look at Bing, they look at our Google business profile, they're looking at our social media pages, they're looking at Yellow Page listings, and they're just validating that the business is legit, that all the information is congruent. When it's not, it's potential fraud concern, and it accounts for more than half of more than half of all denials for credit and financing are because of that one reason. So this all ties into fundability. We've got to set up a fundable business to be able to have the best chance of getting approved for maximum credit and financing. The next thing is we've got to build initial credit. We've got to get initial accounts on the business credit profile and score. And there's really two ways to do this. The first is something we call credit line hybrid. It's using credit lines. We use personal guarantees and good credit of the business owner, and then they go out and get 50, 100, 150,000 in revolving credit lines. And then those credit lines report to the business credit reporting agencies. And as a result of that, then the business credit report started with $10, $20, $30,000 credit limit accounts. And that jump starts the business owner's ability to then get higher limit accounts on future approvals. Now, the second more common way to be able to build business credit are what are called starter vendors. And these are vendors that will give you credit when you have none, and they report that credit to the business credit reporting agencies. It doesn't matter which of these methods that we use. What we're trying to do here is get at least 3 to 5 accounts on our business credit reports. It's crucial. Because if we look at the bureaus in the business world, Dun & Bradstreet, Equifax, and Experian, the main three, Equifax and Experian, 2 of the 3 will give you a credit profile. They'll give you a credit score. It's a failing credit profile and score. It reflects about as high a risk as you can get of defaulting, going bankrupt, closing your doors. They call it a financial stability risk score. And if you have a credit profile with no credit, which will happen if they know your business name, your business industry, and your address, which they get from your Secretary of State records. So when you file annual reports, Experian Equifax gets the data. They create a credit profile and score. They put you about a 5 or a 6 is the score, with 0 being the worst you could be and 100 being the best of failing, of being a failing business. So they will create a profile and a score showing we're failing, making it very difficult for us to get credit financing. We don't even know that this is happening or why that's the factor that makes it hard for us to get financing, just because we have no credit. So we've got to use one of these methods to get 3 to 5 accounts on our business credit reports, pay those bills as agreed, and then that's the key to starting the initial business credit reports and scores. Then with those, we can build off of that foundation to continue to get even more and more credit. And that's really the next step, is we continue to build more and more credit. When we have about 5 accounts, now we can start to get credit most major retailers. We've got about 8 accounts on our business credit reports. We can start to get fleet credit, fuel cards for repair or maintenance of vehicles, things of that nature, all without guarantees and credit checks. And when we get to what I call the end of the process, we get there with about 14 accounts. Our clients get there in about 4 to 6 months. And this means that we're able to get auto financing. We're able to get Visa cards, MasterCards without personal guarantees and credit checks. And then the more we use this credit, the more credit we're able to get, the higher and higher and higher our limits are. And again, the nice thing is that we're able to do all of this without personal guarantees or credit checks. Now, there's some tips to follow. We don't want to build credit just to move to the next step. We want to use the credit. That's what gets us higher limits in the future. So we've got to make sure that we're building business credit, and we're also coming in. Sorry about that. The only time my phone ever rings is when one of my kids is calling. They're the only ones that can break through and actually get me on the phone. So we want to make sure that we're using the credit that we actually get. We want to make sure that we don't get distracted by novices as well. Look, there's a lot of overnight gurus that come out that talk a lot about building business credit. But again, the reality is they've only done it maybe for themselves. They've never really done it for other people. So we've got to watch the information that's out in the space. And we don't want to supply our social security number for any other reason other than just being able to verify our identity. We don't want to supply it for the reason of having a personal guarantee or for a personal credit check. Okay. And if you want to get credit monitoring, you're able to do so at creditsuite.com/monitoring. Now, it's not easy. Okay. I might make it out to be easy, but the reality is there's hundreds of factors that tie into building business credit. We've got a group that literally has 60,000 engagements in it every month. And these are the type of questions that a lot of people ask. So there are a lot of things to learn along the way, but it gives you at least an idea of an overview of the actual process and what's involved with building corporate credit, again, without a personal guarantee and without a personal credit check. And I also talked to Natalie about, and I don't know see if I have a few minutes here to be able to read this, but here's an example of what happens when you actually get this correct. And I want to read this to you because this is the result of what happens when we get business credit done correctly. And this is Josh Elledge here in Orlando, Florida. Quote, one thing that's beautiful about Credit Suite is we started with baby steps. The first thing that we did is get a couple of revolving credit lines and store credit. Then we graduated to gas cards. Then we ended up getting a very nice line of credit at Amazon. And then we worked our way up to getting a very, very nice SBA loan. Thanks to Credit Suite, we were able to really get our business finances in order from what looks good to potential lenders and potential creditors. And we became very attractive to lenders. The best opportunities are always available to those that have the credit game locked down. And that's what Credit Suite platform allows you to do. We've been able to make smart investments in staffing, marketing systems, sales systems, product development, all these things before Credit Suite we just really couldn't do. I just don't have to stress out as much anymore because I have money in the bank to take advantage of opportunities. I'm not stressed anymore. I can keep a bank account. There's plenty of cushion in there. And that cushion, just honestly, it makes me a better dad. It makes me a better husband because I'm not stressing out. I think we can all relate to this. It's easier to run a business if we have access to capital, if we're not thinking about meeting payroll, if we're be able to give us the ability to be present with our family. And when we look at Josh, you can see all these things tied together. He starts talking about looking good from a lender's perspective. That's fundability. He starts talking about small baby steps with store credit cards, with gas cards, with Amazon credit cards. Then as he built his business credit, he was able to reach his ultimate goal in a very short period of time, which was to go in and secure SBA funding for hundreds of thousands of dollars that then helped him pivot to a whole different industry model and then build a 7-figure business within a year after. So this is really the result of what we see when people build business credit. Now, I did talk to Natalie about throwing in a bonus here, which is about financing. So I wanted to teach you a lot about corporate credit, but I also know that your clients could probably buy more from you if they have access to capital. So I just wanted to throw in a little bonus segment here over a couple minutes before we wrap up. And I want to talk a little bit about financing for coaches, because the reality is that your clients could probably buy a lot more from you if they're actually able to get money to be able to do so. And so this is one of the things that we actually help a lot of coaching companies do, is actually get funding to be able to basically help their clients buy more of the products and services. And there's a couple different ways to do it. First of all, there's outside companies that if we can ever help you with, we can do introductions that will help finance your customers for you. They have terms as much as 24 months, rates as low as 4%. We've got that will approve everyone. I mean, it could be an active bankruptcy and still get financing over 12 or 24 months terms. So again, in a lot of cases, it can actually help build business credit and also give somebody the ability to be able to come in and be able to get the money that they need to buy more from you. The other option is being able to get financing. If they have cash flow, if they have good credit, or if they have collateral, then you're able to even rely on that and be able to use that to be able to get financing very quickly as well. So business owners are able to either work with a financing company to be able to finance your product or services. They're also able to tap into their own cash flow, their own credit, their own collateral, use that as a strength to qualify for all types of business capital as well. So that being said, hopefully you got some value out of this. Hopefully you now have a really good overview of what business credit is, how it works, how to get it. And now you also have this extra bonus idea of how many more people can you help if they were able to finance your services over 12 or 24 months, maybe even build business credit at the same time. So Natalie, that's it for me. I wanted to bounce that back to you. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like me to throw in here as we wrap up.
No, that was awesome. I love, so basically the idea there is building business credit is nice to have when you actually need it, but you need to start working on that and building that while you don't need it, right?
That's the thing. It does take some time to build. I had lunch with a friend today, and that was the conversation. She said, I'm really going to need this in the future. I'm like, you want to start now? Because the last thing you ever want to do is be in a bad position when you need money. Set yourself up for success. Do it as early as you possibly can, even when you start a business. And then that way, when it comes time to get the loans, the credit lines, the credit cards, you're prepared. You've got the credit profile that can actually help make that happen.
Love it. Ty, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and everyone, we'll see you in the next session.